Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Well, a great good morning to you, as my Celtic forebears would have said. A great good morning to you.
Great. Good morning.
Good morning, brother.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
So there are a couple of announcements. There will be no noon class this coming Saturday, November 13th. As usual, this year I have been asked to talk to the Atlanta Archdiocese's class for new deacons. They like to hear about what we teach here. So each year I go and talk to them about that at the invitation of the man who heads the deaconate formation classes, they call it, Dr. Bob Howard. Because of the virus, we will not celebrate Thanksgiving with a gathering of the congregation again this year. Of course, that is very unfortunate and is not what we would wish. But erring on the side of caution, we will not have a group gathering for Thanksgiving, a congregational gathering. So before we begin, is there anything anyone else would like to say in the way of an announcement or just something to offer to the congregation? All right. November is a month for the study of karma yoga, a spiritual path leading to the abandonment of selfishness or self-centeredness. As a karma yogi, you practice offering your actions and their results, as well as your perceptions, thoughts, and feelings to the divine presence. In many Ramakrishna mission centers, this prayer is chanted by the congregation in unison at the end of a puja's homa fire ceremony. No matter what I might have done, said, or thought, in waking, dreaming, or dreamless sleep, with my mind, my tongue, my hands, or my other members, may all that be an offering to the divine presence. Now that's the end of the chant. Even before fully knowing this divine presence, you hold firmly to the belief that this presence is within each person or other living being that you interact with or serve. Working and abiding in this spirit, you are increasingly able to release attachment to your activities and their results. This yields the freedom and contentment promised by karma yoga. As Sri Krishna says in chapter 2 of the Gita, even a little practice of this yoga will save you from the terrible wheel of rebirth and death. So the topic this morning, under the heading of Karma Yoga, is nature is for the soul. And I'd just like to repeat the caveat that I've been saying. This is not meant as personal instruction for you. I'm not a guru. I'm not your guru. I'm not trying to give you personal instruction. These are the principles and practices of karma yoga interpreted through this lens of nature is for the soul. Please take from it what you find useful, if anything at all. And don't think that in any sense that this is meant to tell you what to do, how to think. It's simply an invitation to consider this particular point of view about karma yoga. So with that, as this talk is given, the words nature, mother, and prakriti will refer to the same divine presence. As this talk is given, the terms nature, mother, and prakriti will refer to the same divine presence. Here are some examples. There is a beautiful aphorism in Patanjali. Nature is for the soul, not the soul for nature. This is from Realizing God, a book by Swami Prabhupada. In the Devi Mahatmyam, the Chandi, speaking to the Divine Mother, Brahma says, "You are pleasing, yea, more pleasing than all the pleasing things, and exceedingly beautiful. And whatever or wherever a thing exists, whatever power all that possesses, is yourself." This he addresses to the Divine Mother. Krishna says to Arjuna, the Supreme Brahman in this body is also known as the witness. It makes all our actions possible. Krishna says to Arjuna, the Supreme Brahman in this body is also known as the witness, capital W. It makes all our actions possible, and as it were, sanctions them, experiencing all our experiences. He who is known, this witness, to be other than Prakriti and the gunas, will not be reborn. That's from chapter 13. Swami Brahmananda said, Mother has the key to the knowledge of Brahman. Unless she shows her grace and opens the door, no one can enter the realm of Brahman. This morning, we will weave these and other texts together and explore how they are an essential foundation for the practice of karma yoga. This idea that mother, or the divine presence by those various names, by any name really, is the doer, and you are not the doer, is the foundation we're talking about. This is very subtle, very difficult to grasp, and is known only by the practice, as we'll hear, of spiritual disciplines: concentration, contemplation, meditation. And for the karma yogi, living life, as Sri Krishna puts it, sacramentally, offering everything to the divine presence, everything without exception. Here is a poem about Sri Sharda Devi, Holy Mother, in which she tells us not only that she offers everything to the divine presence, and gains all her joy and bliss from the divine presence, but she also tells us who she truly is. For those of you, the word Gadai is used in the poem. Gadai is what she called Sri Ramakrishna, her husband. Others referred to him as Ramakrishna or Sri Ramakrishna. She called him, as she called everyone, by their familiar names, their family names. His boyhood name was Gadai. The poem is titled Picture of Bliss. She lived for years in a room so small she could barely stand. Fish in a pot that hung above splashed water on her as she slept. No space there for a cot. The floor she sometimes shared with other women was of stone. In spite of this, she said to her companions, "My heart overflows with a picture of bliss." Years later, she'd agree. Life was hard then. Yes, my legs still ache from sleeping on that damp and chilly floor. And yet what she remembered best was peeping through a broken screen to sometimes get a glimpse of her beloved Gadai. This, she'd say to her disciples, this alone could fill my heart with a picture of bliss. When she would return from time to time to the little town where she was born in West Bengal, some devotees would follow her from the city. Though torn by a wish to be alone, she could not turn them away. They come for this, she'd say, pointing to her heart. We knew she meant her love, that picture of bliss. A famous writer of Calcutta, that drunkard Ghosh, who became a saint, once visited her village home, where she did not wear a veil. "Oh, this can't be so," he cried. "That face, your sweet, bare face, I've known from boyhood, when in this form you came and pulled me back from death." Laughter poured from her picture of bliss. "What kind of mother are you?" Girish asked. "Your real mother, my child," she said. "Not just the wife of your guru, not a foster mother, not a vague sort of mother, your real mother." He sat for a moment in silence. "Can this be true?" Girish asked at last, and wept the tears that filled his picture of bliss. It is the creation, the revelation, really, of that picture of bliss within you that allows you to understand the instructions of karma yoga and begin to actually live from that place. So that's where we're going with all this. How does this tie together as a frame of reference for and a foundation on which to practice karma yoga? It begins with a spark of reverence, some small feeling of awe for the divine presence, here spoken of as nature, mother, Prakriti. Before you can start to let go of the idea that you are the doer, you need to have that spark of reverence, that beginning of awe for the divine presence, before you can let go of the idea that you are the doer. Without letting go of that idea, there is no real possibility of grasping what is meant when Brahma says, whatever or wherever a thing exists, whatever or wherever a thing exists, whatever power all that possesses, is the mother. He says, is yourself. Speaking to the divine mother. Here's a suggestion from Swami Yatishwarananda. Swami Yatishwarananda, from Swami Vijnananda. Here's a suggestion from Swami Vijnananda. Swami Vijnananda was the last of Sri Ramakrishna's monastic disciples and the guru of Swami Swahananda, the Swami who sent me here, as you may remember. So here's what Swami Yatishwarananda said. Whether you invoke the mother or not, she is looking after you all right. But if you really call on her, you will be filled with joy. See how the sun, the moon, the stars, the mountains, and the rivers are all in a quiet, meditative mood, as if invoking the mother and thinking of her only? Only man, the greatest of all created beings, is engrossed in material comforts and does not think of her. To invoke the mother with all one's heart is a very joyful experience. My dear brother, there is not the slightest doubt about it. To invoke the mother with all one's heart is a very joyful experience. My dear brother, there is not the slightest doubt about it. Sri Ramakrishna and Vijnananda's brother disciples had a very high opinion of Swami Vijnananda and the place from where he spoke. This is from Swami Yatishwarananda. You may remember Swami Yatishwarananda was Swami Yogeshananda's guru. Yogeshananda, the founder of this center. Swami Yatishwarananda said, but let us remember, none of us can suddenly attain perfection in spiritual disciplines. A certain minimum progress is necessary so that our body, mind, and senses are in a harmonious state, and the ego, the perverse ego, should be in a mood to come in touch with the cosmic will that lies behind the little will. And here, cosmic will is also a reference to the divine presence or mother. By this, the Swami means the practice of karma yoga. That statement, he means the practice of karma yoga integrated with the first two limbs or steps of Raja Yoga, the yamas, the restraints, and the niyamas, the observances. So here's how the quote continues. When to some extent we have become established, remember, to some extent, in bringing about harmony, first in the body, then in the mind and the senses, and when we have succeeded in awakening in this spirit, awakening in us spiritual aspiration, when we have done this to some extent, then we may start with asana, sitting in the proper posture, which is the actual first step in the path of meditation. So, before we go on, is there anything that anyone would like to offer from their own experience, from their own wisdom? Remember, this is all holy company. We all have something to offer here as we study the art of spirituality together. Something from your own wisdom, your own experience, or if you feel that there's something that isn't clear and you have a concern or want to raise a question, please do.
Brother Shankara, this is Homa.
Yes, Haima dear.
Okay, to get to the picture of my bliss, what you were talking, my key was meditation. Key is meditation. It's a continuous practice of meditation daily. I feel that is my key to get to the picture of my bliss and to get to the Brahman. I may not be there, but I can see I am, on the path. I am on the path. And that is what my key. Am I correct?
Absolutely, dear.
Thank you.
But what we've been talking about now is what it is that is preliminary to the ability to sit for meditation. There has to be that awakening, and I'm sure you can identify it in your own past, when it happened, maybe even how it happened. That awakening of this feeling, we begin quite naturally, as Swami Sridharananda said. We start with this very self-evident understanding, I am. We're eons old as this appearance of a being, now a human being. So it's quite self-evident, I am. But then when something begins to, there are a number of conditions that bring it about, which Sri Krishna mentions in the Gita, but it is this itch, this urge, this ache, however it appears to us. There's something more. I know there's something more. Something in me tells me there's something more. And so you move from just I am to I am and thou art. Then spiritual progress becomes possible. Then you can begin to say, well, what is this? What is this that I'm sensing? And so you may seek instruction. You may find your way to a guru, or a guru may draw you to that person. You begin to practice at least prayer and contemplation. You may practice a little ritual, a little waving of incense and light and so on, to honor that which you have discovered. So you become established in I am and thou art. And then, as Haima pointed out, what happens is something changes. You begin to discover as you move from simple prayer, and nothing simple about it really, but nevertheless, your ritual, your prayer, whatever it is, you move into this idea that this that I have encountered, this thou art, is the vastness. And I am somehow a small part of that. So you move from I am and thou art to thou art and I am. And there's the word therefore in that. Thou art, therefore I am. The final realization is that there is only thou, and that there never was really an I am. That this was a delusion, as Sri Krishna says in chapter 3 of the Gita. It is the fundamental delusion that I am the causative factor. I am the doer. I am as a reality. But there's no reason to rush that. There's no reason to act as if that's a reality. You can take a stand for it, but it isn't good to be pious about it. When the realization dawns that thou alone exists, whatever or wherever a thing exists, all that is thyself. So Haima's absolutely right. The key is meditation. What is meditation? Turning within. But as Swami Yatishwarananda said, some things have to happen first. One has to abandon the self-centeredness, and this is what he means by harmony in the body, mind, and senses. As long as you're in a self-centered state, as long as you are feeling that you have somehow to take from the world, you have an adversarial relationship with the world and most other people, this disquiet, this disharmony makes it impossible to sit for meditation. Thank you, Haima, for underlining that and bringing it to our attention again. Anything else from anyone? Yes.
I love just the topic of this talk. The nature is for the soul, because it's through nature. I mean, we can learn so much through nature, and
Yes.
we have opportunities and examples and opportunities to practice karma yoga. And I also say, be careful what you ask for or think you want. Because I've always been an animal lover and critter lover, but it's my practice in loving them and seeing them as the divine being. That's easy with the floofs, the puppies and kittens, but when it comes to insects, a lot of us have trouble with that. And I saw Uma go. So, but I have just, I made it a practice to see them, even if I still got the squirms about certain insects, to be more compassionate, to behave more compassionately. And that was my conscious intention. But over time, it's become, I can't hurt them, even if there's a part of me that wants to just eliminate the problem that I see.
Yes.
And this is not a pest insect to me, but there was a large, one of those new orb spiders that everyone is saying is invasive, but they're huge and they're large. And it was right out my bathroom window, beautiful, huge web all summer. And I got to just watch its life and get to know it. And it would be in its little nest or web facing due east, face the east all the time, like it was meditating. And I knew that it wouldn't live through the winter. And so as it got cold recently, I would see it no longer was repairing that beautiful web. And on really cold mornings, I would look out and it would have its arms, its legs kind of curled up to it. So it's like, yes, even this little spot, the spider gets cold too, because as the day warmed up, it would stretch back out. And anyway, just probably within the last week, I looked out there and the spider was gone. And I was really sad. I missed the spider, but then I noticed in the sun, in the eastern direction, the sun coming up was shining on this web, and right in the middle where it usually stayed, you could see the coloring. I don't know if it was what it was, but this spider was bright green and yellow and red. It was almost like the subtle essence of this creature remained. And it made me feel really happy that, I don't know, I'm going on and on, but it was really beautiful, and it really struck me that the thing that Mother said about, don't beat that cat. I am in that cat. Well, she's not just in the cat, she's in the spider and all of it.
Whatever or wherever a thing
Yes.
exists, all that is yourself. Yes, I'm glad you told that beautiful story about the spider.
And one
Yes.
more thing, I know I've been going on, and I'm really sorry, but I also have one mosquito living in my house. And usually mosquitoes are like, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm gonna get you. And I wanted to, but I felt like there was this presence in the mosquito saying, look, I'm not gonna bite you. I'm too tired to bite you. I just came inside to have a, more pleasant demise. And it's still hanging around my kitchen. It hasn't bothered me at all. And maybe I'm crazy, but okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you for all of that. And that's demonstrably what happens to us when we practice, when we do our spiritual practices over years, is we become aware of the divine presence in everything. As Swami Vivekananda said, where shall we go to find God, if not in our own hearts and in every living being? And Holy Mother, Cindy was talking about the spider, the mosquito. Holy Mother, Sri Sharda Devi said, I have compassion even for an ant, A-N-T, ant. So anything else from anyone?
Yes, Brother Shankara.
Yes, Umati.
First, I would like to respond to Cindy's observation. I started out just like that. I could not stand the sight of any insect, much less, those crawling and huge spiders and those kind of things. So the difference that now I see in my treatment of those insects is, first I used to crush them under my feet, but now the change is that I would look away and pick them up, throw them out of the door into the nature, or sometimes drown them in toilet. So I don't know whether that is called saving or killing, but at least that much difference. But now come back to what I want to raise a question. In all my readings, which are very humble, not that much, but whatever I have read in the books of Vedanta and Vivekananda and Ramakrishna and all those pious souls, never ever I have found any reference to the beauty of nature and how to see God in the trees, in the leaves, in the plants. Well, we know we do it in prayer, but I do not see aesthetic appreciation of the objects of nature in the Vedantic thought. Although I also remember that Sri Ramakrishna always suggested that we go from time to time into solitude, into nature, to find ourselves and to be peaceful and quiet and far away from the madding world. Other than that, I don't see any poetic or aesthetic appreciation, and to identify God with nature.
Well,
that's
read some of Swami Vivekananda's poetry. You will find it there. Particularly the things that he wrote when he was in Kashmir on that houseboat, toward the end of his life. And we remember that Sri Ramakrishna planted a garden called the Panchavati, 5 trees, very deliberately, and very different trees. He also observed the beauty of the flower gardens there at he made observations. You'll find them in the gospel and elsewhere, about the beauty of the flower gardens there. But Sri Ramakrishna and his disciples were very intent on offering us the means of liberation. And it is a fact that in the beginning, we turn away from the world of the senses, which includes even the highest aesthetic sensibilities. Mm-hmm. Then we come to, and here we find Sri Ramakrishna sometimes rhapsodizing, more in the Great Master, or his divine play as translated by Chaitanya, rhapsodizing about the beauties of nature and the fact that they are, that properly understood, they are the divine beings, simply, as he said, water still, that is Brahman, Nirguna Brahman, no attributes, no motion, so to speak. Water still, or water in waves, the same water. And so, though we don't find the kinds of things that we find in say, Meister Eckhart or St. Francis of Assisi, in the lives and experiences of Sri Ramakrishna's direct disciples, I don't think it's just simply not emphasized. I don't think it was missing.
Thank you.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you.
Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
I have a different take on mosquitoes and spiders. In Tetra Yuga, they did animal sacrifices with the justification as when the animal is sacrificed, it gets to the higher birth. They even did a Ashwamedha Yagam. So why can't we just, because of the mosquitoes or brown recluse spiders, they're danger to the human beings. Why can't we kill them with the intention that they're going to get to the better, higher form of the birth?
Well, as a matter of fact, that is exactly the way Swami Yogeshananda did kill insects. The big black roaches and other insects that he killed. He would always, in the act of killing them, say, "Get thee to a higher life. Get thee to a higher life. Get thee to a higher life." He would repeat it 3 times. And so there is no dogma here, dear. That's why I said what I said at the very beginning of this talk, this caveat that is repeated. There is no dogma. Yes, there are various ways of seeing these things. And as a matter of fact, though I don't know whether you find it in the gospel, you certainly do find it in the Great Master, that at one time, I think it was Turiyananda, I don't remember. Is still a boy before he took his monastic name and all. He came into Sri Ramakrishna's room, and Sri Ramakrishna had his sandal by the toe and was killing bed bugs with the heel of his sandal. And whoever it was that came into the room, one of his that became one of his disciples, said, "Well, what about ahimsa?" And Sri Ramakrishna said, "But they were biting me." So every time we want to make limitations, we have to be a little careful. Why am I imposing a limitation on the divine presence, or on the way that I should even behave? What is it that I'm doing? The goal is freedom from limitation. It isn't that we should take license to do whatever we damn well please. No, we need to act from conviction, not from reaction, careless reaction. But if we act from conviction, as you just said, the conviction that I am sending, particularly if I hold that intention, I'm sending this insect to a higher life. Sure, there are people who would argue with that. Let them argue. They have their opinions. Everyone's opinion, as Sri Ramakrishna used to say, everyone thinks that their watch tells the right time. So thank you for bringing that up. That's a very legitimate observation, and is a truth, of course.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Mm-hmm. Anything else from anyone? This is the kind of discussion we should be having based on what has been presented. Where does it lead?
Shankara?
Yes, dear.
This is Laurie.
Yes, Lord.
I just wanted to mention something that I heard a long time ago somewhere, that God sees through every eye. And I think about that often.
Yes, well, Meister Eckhart said, "The eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me." So, yes. In the Upanishads, it is said God, the Brahman, is the eye of the eye, the ear of the ear, the speech of the speech. If we take seriously the terms omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent, we get some glimpse of what Brahma was meaning when he said, wherever or whatever or wherever a thing exists, all that is yourself. Thank you, Lori. Someone else piped up at the same time as Lori and then went quiet.
Yeah, that was me. Just to put in
Yes.
my 2 cents. Yeah, I too had Joro, the Japanese Joro spiders in my backyard. I posted pictures of them on Facebook if anybody is Facebook friends with me. And I too found them quite beautiful. It turned out they're quite beneficial too by eating mosquitoes and other harmful insects. But now a question.
Yes.
I found it interesting that Sarada Devi said with a tone of authority to Girish Ghosh, "I am your real mother." And I was wondering, what was his earthly mother like? Was she a humble, kind Hindu woman, or one of those screaming shrew? I don't know. We have no idea. But do we know what his earthly mother was like?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm sure if you read the book, if you read Swami Chaitanananda's book, it's about 3 or more inches thick. It's one of his biggest books about Girish Ghosh, his biography. You will find out what his mother was like. But I don't know. I have no answer to your question.
Okay, I'll have to add that to my queue.
But when Holy Mother said that to him, she said in other contexts that this is true of every living and inanimate being. She is the mother of all that exists, and all that, in the sense of existence and non-existence, what is and is not. She is the mother of all that is not, that is to say, all that is too subtle for us to understand as isness. She is the mother of all that. But yes, she said to Girish Ghosh, I am your real mother, I am your true mother. And she meant that not just for him, but for all of us. Sharda Devi, if we're to believe what is written and said about her by all of the direct disciples and others, her other disciples, and Sri Ramakrishna himself, she is the mother of the universe. She appeared to us this time, according to Sri Ramakrishna, as Saraswati. And if you grasp who Saraswati is, and you look at the change in the world that happened from the time of her birth until today, you will see, my God, when Saraswati came into the world, she utterly transformed it. I mean, the difference between communication at the time that Mother was born and communication now, direct result, if we are to believe what is said about Saraswati, direct result of her power appearing in the realm of human beings and universe itself. God only knows what's going on in universe. We know we're communicating more with universe than we ever were before. We're building bigger and better telescopes. We're inventing new ways of astronomy, the gravity wave astronomy that's happening. It's astounding, really astounding. I mean, if you want to be inspired with awe, just look at the changes in the world since the mid-18th century, mid-19th century, when all of these divine beings were born into this world.
That's true. That's when the telegraph was invented, the first real long-distance communication device.
Yes. Sri Ramakrishna even remarked on, if there's a break in the wire, it won't work. He uses it as a metaphor for spiritual practice. Anything else, dears?
Brother Shankar?
Yes, Bhagirath, I've been waiting to hear from you.
You know, we have taken upon ourselves that our life is superior, worth saving, and the other insects can be killed because their life is lowly, and we are liberating them by killing them. This is wrong, scientifically wrong, ethically wrong, spiritually wrong, because each life is entitled to its own length. So when they are born, when they naturally die, there is nothing wrong in it. At the same time, while you are living, whatever is essentially to maintain your life is permissible. The same spider, which we call beautiful, it spreads out a web to catch another insect. And when that insect comes, he ferociously goes to that one and with multiple stings, kills it to feed himself. So that idea that I'm liberating a lowly life to offer an opportunity of a higher life is dangerously fallacious, because at the same time, while you are killing a lowly one, there could be another man who says, in my opinion, you as a human being are so low and you have lived so badly that let me kill you. And you should say, okay, we don't do that, because the preservation of life, the self-preservation of life is our natural instinct, which brings us to your topic of Prakriti. Because that is the kind of nature which God, there's a lifespan God has woven. Yes, as long as the virus kills you, you have an obligation, biological, to kill it so that you are not killed. So basically, this is a jivo jivasya karanam. Life supports itself on life. Life is killed upon by another life. So we have to look at it as fascinating. And therefore, for example, when the mosquito is feeding us, why do we do like this? What we say? If you do that, then if someone takes away a breastfeeding child from the mother, you should allow that too. Because if the mosquito is feeding and therefore you are killing, therefore if the baby is feeding on the breast, you can kill that baby too. So I think this is such a maze that it's best not to enter into it, but accept Prakriti the way God has made it and live as naturally as you can. And that was the question, what was the earthly mother like? To me, as a biologist, all earthly mothers are alike. There is no difference. Whether it's a tiger mother, whether it's a human mother, whether it's an insect mother, or whatever. So I look upon the entire thing from an entirely different, wider spectrum and find that everyone has one's own place. Let us find our place, live as much as God allows us to live as piously and as beneficiary as you can. And when your time comes to go, you go.
Well, Bhagirath, all of what you say makes perfect logical sense. It all knits together as a system of thinking that is unassailable, and yet there are different opinions. For us to arbitrate among those opinions would be presumptuous. So I gratefully accept what you said as a great statement of truth, a statement of truth. There are other statements of truth which have been brought up by other devotees. And so there will be no attempt to arbitrate among those opinions. But thank you for stating yours so beautifully, and I would say even eloquently. We'll leave it to each person to decide how much of this dream how much of this dream of Brahman's is a limitation, and how much of it is a system of allowing us freedom. So with the minutes we have left, we'll leave the last word to Swami Vivekananda. Learn to feel yourself in other bodies, to know that we are all one. Throw all other nonsense to the winds. Spit out your actions, good and bad, and never think of them again. What is done is done. Throw off superstition. Have no weakness even in the face of death. Do not repent. Do not brood over past deeds, and do not remember your good deeds. I bobbled that, so let me read it again. Have no weakness even in the face of death. Do not repent. Do not brood over past deeds, and do not remember your good deeds. Be free. The weak, the fearful, the ignorant will never reach Atman. You cannot undo the effect must come. Face it. You cannot undo. The effect must come. Face it. But be careful never to do the same thing again. Give up the burden of all deeds to the Lord. Give all, both good and bad. Do not keep the good and give only the bad. God helps those who do not help themselves. So I'm going to read that again from the beginning because this is a very eloquent statement about the practice of karma yoga. Learn to feel yourself in other beings, to know that we are all one. Throw all other nonsense to the winds. Spit out your actions, good or bad, and never think of them again. What is done is done. Throw off superstition. Have no weakness even in the face of death. Do not repent. Do not brood over past deeds. And do not remember your good deeds. Be free. The weak, the fearful, the ignorant will never reach Atman. You cannot undo. The effect must come. Face it. And be careful, but be careful never to do the same thing again. Give up the burden of all deeds to the Lord. Give all, both good and bad. Do not keep the good and give only the bad. God helps those who do not help themselves. So this is a very eloquent statement of the heart, the very heart of karma yoga. Any comments or questions from anyone?
Yes, please. One question. Last sentence, do not help yourself. How is it that? Because all these spiritual disciplines, we are learning to have our own judgment, our own discretion, what to do, what not to do. Also, our sense of balance, all these spiritual practices, we do it to get control over our bad habits, our bad thinking, and to remake ourselves in the image of God. So that last sentence throws me off. That
All right, dear. It is rooted in the denunciation of what Sri Krishna calls our fundamental delusion, and that is that we are the doer at all. All of these things that you just mentioned that we do, according to Sri Krishna in the Gita, according to Sri Ramakrishna in the Gospel, according to Jesus Christ, if you look deep into his teachings, we are not the doer. It is happening. And as was pointed out earlier in one of the quotes, we witness it. We, the divine being, witness what is happening. And it is all for our own good, the good of the divine being, freeing the divine being from the delusion of doership and ownership. This is why I said that what Swami Vivekananda said here, was a summary of the very heart and soul of Karma Yoga. Karma Yoga is abandoning the idea of self, small s self, the perverse ego, as Swami Yatishwarananda put it.
Yes, brother, I totally understand that we should give up our sense of I did it, I am important, or that kind of perverse ego. But nevertheless, all Patanjali and Bhagavad Gita and other texts, they also mention the importance of self-effort, purushartha. And in the Gita it says, when man's Arjuna's efforts and God's grace both combine, then things change for better.
Yes,
so that's what I'm talking about. Listen.
I understood you perfectly, and I understand the paradox that you're pointing to perfectly. At least I think I do.
Oh, sure, yes.
And so Sri Ramakrishna says in the gospel, it is only when we come into the neighborhood of God, that is to say, when we've reached the 7th story of the building that he speaks of, or the 7th story of the mountain, as Thomas Merton refers to it, or the 7th limb of the tree, as Jesus describes it in the Gospel of the Beloved Companion, where his yoga is really fully explained, that we understand. And in the meantime, we simply have to live our convictions. We have to be true to ourselves. We are infinite beings. There is no simple explanation that is going to fit all of us. None. Ultimately, we will all come to our own definition and understanding of the divine presence and our being within that presence. In the meantime, as the Buddha said, be a lamp unto yourself. As Shakespeare said, to thine own self be true, and it follows as the night the day, that thou canst not be false to anyone. One of the great scriptural statements in the literature of the West. All of the great teachers say, seek, seek, seek. Seek and ye shall find. And what does Christ say? Seek ye first the kingdom of God. That is the divinity within yourself, the divinity that lives there as the king in that kingdom. But it is not apart from you. You are a part of that if there's any partness at all. And he says, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all will be added unto you. All righteousness, all knowledge, all wisdom. And that's the same thing that Sri Ramakrishna was pointing to when he said, come into the neighborhood of God, and all of these paradoxes will be resolved. But you're absolutely right, Umadidi. I mean, how can anyone say that it doesn't say what you just said it says in the Gita? But it says both things.
Yes.
It says one thing in chapter 3 and another in chapter 13 and another in chapter 17, the field and its knower. So, we have to be on the qui vive, as the French would say. We have to be on the alert to these And then we have to pursue our own spiritual practices and see what we find. As Vivekananda said to one of his principal disciples, Sadananda, who was fond of quoting from the scriptures, particularly Christ and Adi Shankaracharya, he was a great debater and arguer, and not in a hostile sense, but the way that monks would talk with one another. But Vivekananda interrupted him one time and said, "Well, Sadananda, all that is very well and good, but what do you know?" And that's what we have to ask ourselves. And that's what we have to live from. And as Brahmadas has pointed out to me in reading some of the books that he reads, he reads them again and he finds things in them that he would swear that weren't even there the first time he read, or the last time he read them. Yes, as we grow, we understand more. But that's what this whole talk was to encourage us to do, is understand that this that we are experiencing is for us. That great quote from the Krishna, let me read it. It is so powerful, so powerful. Pardon me, I have to go way back because I have this type so big. Krishna says to Arjuna, the supreme Brahman in this body is also known as the witness. It makes all our actions possible and, as it were, sanctions them, experiencing all our experiences. He who has known this witness to be other than Prakriti and the gunas will not be reborn. That's in chapter 13 of the Gita. So, we do our best to understand what Krishna is saying from our point of view. This one spark of the infinitude that appears to be each of us here on the screen. What a glory! What a glory! This holy company. Each of us, a unique and infinite spark of that presence, that witness. Can we deny that there are however many of us we see on the screen here? No, we cannot deny this. It's just nonsense to deny it. But what do we make of it? That's what these talks are, some attempt to share what the great teachers have made of it. And so we take what we can from it. We live it as best we can. As Rainier Maria Rilke said, when you're ready, you will understand. But in the meantime, live the questions. Live the questions and be joyous that you are alive to live them. And in time, when you're ready, when you're ripe, as Sri Ramakrishna says, when the ego ripens, then you will understand.
Brother Shankara?
Yes.
This is Swayam. Can you hear me?
I certainly can, loud and clear.
So talking about paradoxes and questions, I'm trying to reconcile two of Swamiji's messages, which appear,
Okay.
which sort of appear contradictory, but I think I sort of, in my own mind, reconcile, but wanted to see your thoughts on that. One is the statement that you read where he says, be careful never to repeat that same mistake again.
Mm-hmm.
And then another where he says, you may fall 1,000 times, but you can get up 1,001 times. So I kind of came to the understanding that by doing the latter, we can get to the former.
That's a nice way to put it. Until we fall again. And then we get up again. And in terms of Swami Vivekananda, there are many places, many, and some have been at pains to point this out, and so denounce Swami Vivekananda, that he contradicts himself. Well, I don't know that Swami Vivekananda himself ever remarked on this, but another great soul, very much admired by Swami Vivekananda, was Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman wrote a big book called Leaves of Grass. And at one point, someone assailed Whitman, saying, Mr. Whitman, you say this here and you say this here. They're contradictory. You contradict yourself. And Whitman was quiet for a few moments. And he said then calmly, I contradict myself. Very well, I contradict myself. I contain multitudes. And this is what is the perception of the realized soul, that they are every being. Those beings will not agree with one another. Well, first of all, let's see if this satisfies Swayam, dear. Was that at all responsive to what you said, Swayam Didi?
Yes, I was less focused on the apparent contradiction, more like how to reconcile, So, like I said, in my mind, I think that by practicing that fall 1,000 times, get up 1,001 times, at some point, you will get to where you never make that mistake again.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Thank you. Yes.
One way of thinking about this.
Wait just a minute. Uma had
okay.
Then
just because it is so much tying in with what we are discussing about contradictions, and obviously they're apparent. According to Mahatma Gandhi, who was time and again accused of paradox and contradicting himself from one statement to another after a period of time. And this is what he said, and I'm paraphrasing. And he said, first of all, I am a creature in the process of making. I am after truth. And truth is a process which you never receive or find at first attempt. So I am growing from truth to higher truth. So, and then he quit and he said, so for you, my dear, take my last statement as the final statement for now. Because I am in the process of growing from truth to truth. So don't take anything as a Brahmavakya or final statement.
Yes, well, this in saying he was growing from truth to truth, whether he knew it or not, he was quoting Vivekananda, who said, we do not move from error to truth. We move from lower truth to higher truth.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, Molly, what is it that you...
Yeah, it seems to me that one way of resolving this seeming contradiction is if we see life as similar to the ocean, we know that below the surface of the ocean, it's fairly calm, but on the surface, it can be turbulent. So it's possible, in my opinion, that we're dealing on two levels, a metaphysical level and a practical level. So when we say God helps those who help themselves, we're not talking about the spirituality of it, but we're talking about the practical. So we can't just lay down and say, well, this is my life, God's going to fix it. We have to actually make efforts to resolve issues at the same time, trusting in God's wisdom and living according to the basic fundamentals, spiritual fundamentals that we believe.
You're
Very good.
who could possibly argue with what you just said, dear? There are other points of view, but let them be. As Sri Ramakrishna said, even the scriptures contain a mixture of sand and sugar.
Yes.
Even the scriptures contain a mixture of sand and sugar. So we have to, as you just pointed out, Molly, live the best we can, the most alertly and intelligently we can at this very moment.
Yes.
Remembering as best we are able from moment to moment what the great teachers have told us about what it means to be alive, who we truly are. I am the vine, ye are the branches. The vine is rooted in the unmanifest and says, I and my Father are one. The manifest and the unmanifest are one. But in the manifestation, I am the vine, ye are the branches. The vine and the branches are not separate, they are one. So I and my Father and the branches are one. What does this mean? How do we, so then we go to the rest of the great teachings, Christ's and all the others, and try to make the best we can of it and live as best we can from moment to moment, day to day. As Swayam pointed out, falling 1,000 times, rising 1,001 times. And, whether Vivekananda was talking about falling the same fall, making the same mistake 1,000 times, or whether he was talking about making 1,000 different mistakes. What difference does it make? Nevertheless, the principle is we get up and keep going. We see this as an adventure. This is an adventure. It's not a finite journey with a finite goal. We have no idea what's next. The past, untrue or true as I recall it, what does it matter now? All that became this moment, this crouching, pregnant moment.
Wonderful.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
Yes, I thought the passage that you read from Swami Vivekananda,
Yes.
at the time of death, do not brood over your mistakes and do not think about your good deeds. He says a lot about what you don't do at the time of death.
He didn't say anything about the time of death, dear. You added that. There's nothing in there about the time of death.
I thought earlier, when you were quoting, when you die, you don't think about don't brood over your mistakes.
It doesn't say anything about death. You added that.
Okay. I was wondering, he said a lot of, you quoted about don'ts and not do's. So I was wondering.
Oh, he does say, have no weakness even in the face of death.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, well, there's These don'ts are do's.
Okay.
Okay? These don'ts are, it's just the same, two sides of the same coin.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, dear.
Brother Shankara,
Yes,
I
dear.
have a question.
Yes.
So in Gita, Krishna said, Karmanye vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phalahetur buhu mato sangoscha karmani. So isn't it my duty when I am treating somebody for wasp bite or brown recluse spider bite, that if I come across those creatures, to eliminate them so that other human beings won't suffer?
Dear heart, we've been over this. You have to live from where you believe is true. And if that's how it seems to you to be the truth, but please don't make it a dogma that others must accept.
No, but I'm not doing something wrong.
As has been pointed out, Krishna contradicts himself even in the Gita.
Yep. Yep.
And so we must not be dogmatic. You must live the truth as you understand it, which is as close to dogma as I'm going to come.
So, but am I going to be punished?
No, dear.
Okay.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
It's not a question of punishment. There is no punisher. Let's get this so clear. There is no punisher. You were forgiven for everything that you might do the moment that Hiranyagarbha exploded and what the physicists call the Big Bang happened. Because it is not you doing anything. It is the divine presence doing everything. Or this is all nonsense and we should forget about it. Either that is true. I mean, we did not create in the sense of these small selves gathered together here today. We did not create this universe. That which manifests each of us did indeed create this universe and everything that ever happened. And every saint's testimony is, you were forgiven for everything that you might do the moment that creation occurred. So there is no punisher. There is karma. Sri Krishna explains so explicitly that if you live sacramentally, if you offer every action to the divine presence, if you live sacramentally, you are free even from karma. Totally, without exception, free from all karma. He'll take it all, even your prarabdha karma.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, does that mean that things don't happen to your body? Yes, but you are not your body.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Thank you, dear, and thank you for quoting that to us.
I think what you said was just, Brother Shankara, is spot on, but I will say that on a level, the small I, ego level, we punish ourselves. That's the punisher.
Oh, yes.
Divine being, consciousness, etc., God does not punish. Like you said, we were forgiven way, way, way back at the beginning of being created. But yes, we do punish ourselves. So stop that.
Yes, we do.
And sometimes I wish we punish ourselves, because sometimes we think, well, I didn't mean it. It's God did everything. And speaking about which, Brother Shankara, I wanted to bring up one very, very pertinent point regarding karma. And it so happened that in the times of Swami Vivekananda, 19th century, people of India had become so, what is the word I'm looking for, lazy, or believing in God will do, God will take care of everything. I don't have to do anything. It is my karma. I'm suffering from my old karmas. So Vivekananda, being Vivekananda, he chided them. He said, come up, you wake up, you do your part, and then you depend on God or trust God. Of course you trust God, but that does not exempt you from your part and your purusharth.
So the divine being is speaking to the divine being.
Yeah.
Yes, and what he said was not that they had. He may have used the word lazy. I don't remember
Not
in those. But what he really was pointing to is that as a conquered people, they had become unmotivated, and so they now were taking refuge in superstition.
Yeah, yeah.
And as a conquered people, they never. He said, you never should have been conquered. You should have never allowed yourselves to be conquered by the Mughals. You should have never allowed yourselves to be conquered by the British, but you did it, and now you have that psychology. This is what's in those lectures from Colombo to Almora. But
yes, yes.
And we see in modern India how this is playing out, which is very much like he said it would play out. First, there would be this great wave of materialism. And then India would refine her roots. And I believe Gandhi said something of the same thing.
And Gandhi said, British rule in India because we allow them to rule.
Yes.
That's what he said.
Yes. And by their courage and their willingness to suffer, they managed to overthrow that non-violently.
Yes.
Brother Shankara.
Yes, dear.
Going back to what Cindy said about the punisher, I agree with her. And just to take it a little bit further, it is not our role or our duty to punish other people, as may happen in such a bipolar society that we're in now. It's only our duty to take care of our own morality. So I guess it's important to remember that it's not for us to punish other people.
Yes, indeed, dear. As a matter of fact, the very best thing that we can do is living our own morality, living our own truth, for us to be as radiant as possible, because this is a dark time and it needs every tiny little light that can be brought into it. We can be great shining lights simply by being loving and kind to other people and at every opportunity. And certainly, as you just pointed out, dear, not to be punitive in our thinking, in our speech, or in our actions. If we are judgmental of other people, oh, whoa. We must empathize, sympathize, understand that I, sitting here, am acting from ignorance. If it weren't true, I would be illumined. So every one of us is acting from whatever remaining ignorance exists within us. Some people are more ignorant than others. That's not an accusation. It's just an observation, as is pointed out. Of course, all people are created equal, but they do not live equally. So it's not for us to punish them. Of course, we have to have the systems of restraint in society to keep people from doing madness, stealing babies, things like that. The reason I bring that up is a friend of Cindy's just opened the door of her van to go somewhere the other morning and found a baby crying in her van. It was one of those Amber Alert babies. And so, of course, she called the police, and the baby was reunited with its parents, who were very sweet to her. And so she did her shining best. And of course, she took care of the baby when it was in her care. And when she saw the baby again, when it had been reunited with its parents, the baby smiled at her.
Oh.
So, we have to have our system of restraints.
We call it punya karya. Punya karya.
Yeah. So,
Blessed.
dears, is there anything else before we close? This is exactly what we should be doing. If there is something else and others want to stay and listen and participate, wonderful. Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara, I just have one comment from Swamiji's last statement, which created some contradiction in minds. What I understood was, he said in the past, be self-reliant in every way. And in this statement, what I got it was, don't live through your ego.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yes.
what I understood. Don't live through your ego. Be self-reliant in every possible way, and then do all the good deeds, but don't live through your unripened ego. That is what I understood.
Very well understood.
Thank you, Brother Shankar.
Thank you, dear. Anything else from anyone?
Shankara?
Yes, dear.
Besides, I do want to say that we all need to be a lot kinder to ourselves.
Yes.
But also, and I wanted to mention this earlier on, but I just wanted to quote Christ from the Gospel of Thomas. There are two quotes that I wanted to bring up, where he said, the kingdom is within you, and it is without you. And the
Yes.
second one is,
But you see it not. That's what he says in one of the other Gospels. I think John.
and then so the other one I wanted to say is that the kingdom is spread upon the earth and people do not see it.
So that's the other part. Yes, okay, so that's all combined in John. Right, exactly. Well, this has been said by all the great teachers. But Christ said it so eloquently and to the point, which is one of his specialties. Mm-hmm. Water still, water and waves, same water, same kingdom. This is what Sri Ramakrishna was pointing to. He said the jnanis in the beginning have to deny the water and waves because it's just too confusing, too noisy, too distracting. They say, oh, fie on all of it, all of it. I'll cling to Brahman and Brahman alone. My devotion will be to Brahman and Brahman alone. Wonderful. Yes. Those who are able have the strength of mind to actually annihilate the aspect of it that is referred to as the water and waves and be only with Brahman. Sri Ramakrishna says, if they remain embodied, they then see something higher than jnana, vijnana, this special knowledge that everything they're seeing is the divine without exception. It is the divine as Shakti, water and waves. So thank you, Lori. Thank you for bringing those out. And good you brought them out now. Thank you. Anything else from anyone? All right, dears. Let there be peace in outer space. Let there be peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. Let there be peace in the herbs, the plants, and the trees. May the gods be peaceful. May the whole universe be pervaded by peace. Let that infinite universal peace prevail throughout my being. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. And let me point out that the Shan in Shanti means more than just peace. It means beneficence. It means auspiciousness. It is, what does peace mean? It means goodness. So let there be all of those. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga Durga Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. And may we go forward in the loving and protective embrace of the divine being as our mother and father. So any final thought from anyone? All right, dears. Well, 2 reminders. We're not going to celebrate Thanksgiving as a congregation, which is most unfortunate and distressing from here. There will be no Saturday class next week because I've been asked to speak to the Catholics deaconate formation class. And of course, there will be these classes next week. First, the reading and discussion group on Monday for the book Love Poems from God. Second, on Tuesday, we're coming close to the end of the wonderful book by Swami Chaitananda on the life of Sri Sharada Devi. And then on Wednesday, we are talking about chapter 14 of Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga. Next Sunday is the 21st, and the topic will be giving thanks. Again, it's within the context of karma yoga. What is it that we might think about for this great celebration of Thanksgiving that will take place on the following Thursday? Anything else from anyone? All right, dears. So
Thank
glad
you so
we had,
much.
Thank you.
it's so nice we had this time together.
Yes.
Until next time.
Adios.
Thank you.
Adios. Adios indeed.
Adios.